What happens when your country starts a war against your neighbor, starts invading your neighbor for no obvious reason, and when entire world starts supporting your neighbor that you invaded and starts punishing you? What happens when your country gets isolated completely, becomes an island in every possible single way, and it becomes the most sanctioned country, no, not in the world, in the history of humankind? Obviously, your economy will crash sooner or later, rather sooner. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, really, to understand that. Obviously, right now, almost 1 year into the invasion of Ukraine, Russian economy starts crashing. It starts free falling. And it's getting so bad, it's really hard to hide this fact by, giving positive news, by using heavy artillery of Russian propaganda and so forth. It's getting so bad that the economists start talking about it and regular people start noticing it. And it's getting so bad that Vladimir Putin himself comes out and says, you know what? Things are normal. Everything is going according to the plan. And the government has done a marvelous job managing the situation, keeping Russian economy under control, and all the enemies of Russia predicting collapse and crash last year were wrong. We are doing okay. And this is literally what happened today. Vladimir Putin had the first public meeting with the Russian government, and that's what he said. Well, Vladimir Putin is either grossly uninformed or he's simply lying. Because in reality, things are not better than they were predicted some 9-10 months ago. They are actually worse. Russian economy is not doing well. It's actually starts free falling. And today, I will prove it to you. I will show that OILMAGEDDON in Russia has already started. Howdy, everyone. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where I give you news updates, latest developments, events, important events happening in Russia, and my takes and views on these events and things. Usual Russia explained by the unusual Russian. That is me. Thank you very much for coming today. Thank you for giving me a chance to hear my message. I hope that you will find it interesting. And I am going to give you some facts about the Russian economy. Right now, it's fairly safe to say that we have all the information, well, at least most of the information for 2022. Yes, we do get statistics in Russia, same as in the other countries. And it's fairly safe to say that I can tell you what's going to happen in this year 2023, what things are to come to Russia. Without further ado, let's jump right into the message today. Troubles, written all over TV, all over papers, all over internet, I don't know, all over. Troubles in Russian economy. Russian economy has foundations. Two foundations. One is oil, crude oil, and second is gas, natural gas. These foundation one foundation of oil and gas, Russian economy is basically built on. Well, let's take a look at what is happening with Russian oil and Russian gas. Before I get into that, I will remind you what I have been saying all along. I don't know how many times. I predicted 9 months ago that Russia was about to hit by an economic tsunami. Tsunami was created by the war, of course, Russia invading Ukraine, and things started happening like a chain reaction. I'm an economist, but you know what? You don't have to be an economist to actually understand this, that every action has a reaction and every economic action has a reaction. Economy is actually a fairly simple thing, you know. It's not physics, nuclear physics or anything like that. It's, you know, basic rules, basic laws of economic activities, and you know that some actions create reactions. You know, if you do this, later you will get that. Okay, that's fairly simple. So one of the biggest problems for Russia, I predicted for all these months, was that Europe was going to stop buying Russian oil. And later it will stop buying Russian gas. And later it will stop buying Russian products of oil processing, diesel and gasoline. And it wasn't a prediction, oh, sometimes in the future it'll happen. No. The dates were actually very clear. December 6th. Sanctions package, I think number 5 or number 6, was set to take effect on December 6th, and it did. And it means that Europeans stopped buying Russian oil. Let's see what happened. Now, usually, Rostov, which is Russian statistics agency, government agency, releases data on how much oil Russia extracted in the previous year. And it releases the information right after the new year begins, within a couple days, you know, January 2nd, 3rd, 4th. That is a hugely important economic indicator because, again, Russian oil and Russian gas, they make the foundation of Russian economy. So there are two things that are important. First is the amount of Russian oil extracted and sold, exported, and the second is the price at which Russian oil was sold. So indicator number 1 is hugely important. Well, guess what? It's been delayed. Russian government is not giving us official data on how much oil was extracted in Russia in 2022. To me, it says volumes. It says that if everything was all right, if everything was going according to the plan, the information would be given to us already by now, just like it was given all previous years since, I don't know, for the past 20 years. Something is not right in the kingdom of Dutch, my friends. And according to the data that we receive from different channels, official channels of other countries, media and so forth, it is fairly safe to say that Russian extraction of oil in 2022 decreased by 22%, almost 1/4 compared to 2021. That is a disaster. We're waiting for the Rostov to give us statistics, but I think it's going to be more or less the same. We can rely on this number, 22%. You write that number down. We will compare how right or wrong I am right now. We'll compare it later. Number 2, Ministry of Finance released data on oil prices for December of 2022. Well, you can't really hide that data because it's out there in public. The markets are transparent. So guess what? Price of Russian oil, crude oil, Urals, fell from $66 per barrel in November to $50 per barrel in December. I'll remind you that there is a cap for other countries that non-European countries, but other ones who buy Russian oil. They cannot pay more than $60 per barrel. Otherwise, they will be subject of different sanctions from the Western countries. And yet, Russian crude Urals price fell even lower than that to 50, not 60, okay? You can imagine that if the cap is at 60 and oil worldwide is trading at like 80, then Russian oil would be trading at 60. No, 50 and falling. And I've been saying it all along. Our Chinese so-called friends and Indian friends are the reasons for that. Because what happened is in March, April, May, there was a spike in oil prices due to uncertainty in the markets, due to chaos and panic. And you remember how much you were paying at the gas stations in spring and early summer. You know, prices skyrocketed. But then the markets calmed down and everything became stable and oil prices started actually falling. And the reason for that is, well, stabilization of the markets and Russia selling oil for $50 per barrel to India and China are due to plain and simple blackmail. You see, Russia cannot sell oil to anyone else because there are two markets that need oil real bad. It's India and China, huge economies. And of course, Europe and the United States. Europe and the United States not buying Russian oil anymore, sanctions. China and India, they understand that now they can demand any price and Russia will pay. Well, Russia will accept that price. So they've demanded $30 to $40 discount per barrel, and Russia kind of has no choice, and it's paying the price. This is a disaster for Russian budget. Later on that. Look at the map, world's map. See, Russia has three key areas that exports oil from by sea. The Baltic Sea on top at the north, the Black Sea on the bottom, Novorossiysk and Tuapse, and the Pacific Ocean. Well, let's take Pacific Ocean out of this equation. That's a different story, but look at the map, how close European countries to the Russian ports of the Black Sea and the Baltics. 2-3 days by sea, right next door, basically the neighbors. Look how long it takes for Russia to export oil by sea to India. 5-6 times at least, 5 to 6 times more, longer. And then if they go to China, that's even longer. Okay, the price of transportation of oil has increased tremendously, and Russia selling oil at $50 per barrel, it means that it's not making money at all. And this is just a huge blow to the budget. Now let's take a closer look at the Gazprom. Gazprom is a government monopoly that extracts and exports gas. No one else is in the business of gas except for Gazprom. You read Gazprom, you read Russian government. So Gazprom released official numbers, again Rostov did, export of Russian natural gas to all over the world. The biggest importers are European countries, well, were European countries, and China, because Russia exports natural gas through pipelines, not through by sea, not through like liquefying gas and shipping it. It has a huge infrastructure of different pipelines, North Stream, South Stream, North Stream 2, the Siberian power, and so forth. So Russian export, general export of natural gas, fell by 40% in 2022. That's the worst result, worst performance since the fall of the USSR. This is bad. This is so bad. It's unimaginable. But it gets even worse. If you remember that Russia was selling lots of gas in the first half of 2022, and then it started by fake reasons decreasing the exports to Europe, trying to leverage its political position, okay? Trying to, using it as an ace in the hole, so to speak. And then, of course, there were two accidents when the Russian pipelines were just blown to pieces. And then Europe stopped buying Russian gas. So, if we're talking about the second part of 2022, export of Russian gas was down by 60%. 60%. It's safe to say that if compared 2021 to 2023, then the fall, the decrease in 23 will be at least 60%, at least I predict more, compared to 2021. This is a disaster for Russian economy, budget. Because Russian economy is getting money from Russian budget from sales of oil and gas. Well, you say there's also China that is buying Russian gas, but not so fast. Because Russia is currently selling natural gas to China for less than it costs Russia to extract it. Get this. It's selling for around $200 per 1,000 square meters. Cubic meters, pardon me, and its cost to extract is around $350. So there we have it. My friends, these are not predictions anymore. This is not forecast. This is the analysis. These are the data, the numbers, the figures. This is what's happening now. Not going to happen in 2023 at the second half no, it's now. Please understand that. So it's really clear to say that there are a few key indicators in Russian economy that kind of gives you a snapshot on what is happening right now. A few indicators I always look for, and any economist looks for, is, I think the most important one is cargo turnover. How much cargo is transported, combined. The number is down by about 18%. Second is retail trade turnover, basically how much stuff people buy, consumers buy, down by 25%. It's not complete data. I'm still waiting for the months of December, but a lot of shopping centers report that their revenues are down by 40+%. That's huge. Another very important indicator is the capital inflow or outflow of capital. If a country is very interesting for investors, foreign investors, and domestic investors, then there's inflow of capital into the country, and lots of individual, private, public investors, pump money into the country and actually invest. It's been the biggest record in history since the USSR fell. According to different sources, up to $260 billion have been transferred out of Russia. Basically, all Western investors have left, and most of Russian investors have also left. Russia has become burnt land for investors. The biggest investor is the government, and the government is not doing well financially. Another indicator is drug manufacturing, down by 20%. That is absolutely huge. It means that Russian people will get less access to drugs because there aren't many foreign drugs on the market due to the sanctions. And Russian manufacturers down by 20%. Different experts give different numbers. I haven't seen the numbers from Rostov. Some say, well, basically from 15 to 20%. I think it's closer to 20%. Mobile communications companies, operators are increasing their prices for mobile internet, for mobile conversations by 30% in this coming year. They all announced. And last year, inflation was in double digits. This is where year 2023 is at the beginning, economy-wise. Now, what is all about? What is all this? What kind of effect all this has on Russian budget and for the following year? What is there to expect? Now, I want to make it clear, Russian budget right now is the only source of capital for many companies that are employed in the government sector, and the employer of up to 30 million Russians, they get paid by the government. And basically, it's the biggest investor that's left in the country. Depending on Russian, like what size of Russian budget, it's clear to say that it will influence on so many areas of life in Russia. Again, coming back to oil and gas, this is the foundation of the Russian budget. I give you the numbers of the decline in exports and revenues for oil and gas in 2022, and 2023 is looking much worse. Therefore, the budget is not looking too great either. Now, at this point already, 2022, it's safe to say that 2022, Russia had deficit of $5 trillion. It spent 30 trillion, I'm sorry, not dollars. Russia had a budget deficit of 5 trillion rubles, of course. It spent 30 trillion rubles, but it only made 25 trillion rubles. Now, this deficit is being financed from the reserves. Half of the reserves are gone because they were placed in the West, and the West basically confiscated the reserves. And half of the reserves are placed in Russia and being used to cover budget deficit. The reserves are called Фонд национального благосостояния. So that reserve is diminishing very, very fast. How do I explain this in very plain words? Imagine you're a household and you head of the family. You are the only one working, right? Your expenditures are $30,000 per year. And in the previous years, you were in the black. You were making, in some years you made $33,000, $35,000, and you had reserves. And you would put aside the reserves to a reserve fund, okay? And it had, currently it has, like $10,000. And all of a sudden, the economy worsens. And you go to work and your boss says, well, you're going to do more work, but you're going to get $25,000 per year instead of, 33. And you can't quit because there's a new law. There's a war in the country, and there's a new law that obliges you to work and get paid. Well, I can pay you whatever amount I need to, and this is what I can afford, $25,000. So you go home, now all of a sudden, you spend $30,000 per year, but you make 25. So you're $5,000 in the red, okay? What do you do next? That's a good question. Well, let's find out what 2023 will bring Russia. I predict a few things. First, 2023 will show us the biggest, the worst, the most magnificent economic crisis of the magnitude that we have not in Russia, we have not seen since the fall of the USSR, since 1991. I remind you, the 90s were very tough in Russia. And what is about to come in 2023, it's just a start, but what is to come can be compared, if not worse, than we had in 1991. Just so you understand, when my dad brought his salary, his salary from work, him and my mom, they would run to a store to spend all the money because the next day they could buy half of goods and food for the same amount of money. Inflation was so high. I am absolutely certainly sure that this is what expects Russia in the upcoming year and in the upcoming years. Number two, most of industries will be worsening, will be doing worse and worse. There is no capital to support, no investments to come, no development to be made whatsoever, because the only investor that is left is Russian government. And Russian budget, Russian government works through the budget, country's budget. And the budget is shrinking, and it will be shrinking greatly in 2023. There will be many more expenditures than earnings. Put military expenses, ever-increasing expenses, into this equation, and you will see that situation is going to be even worse than a lot of economists predict for 2023. So therefore, the state will not be able to help anyone, not people. Remember, 30 million people get paid by the government every single month. What if the government runs out of money, won't be able to pay him? Economic decline and decay will be seen everywhere in 2023. This is going to be the year of a great demise. Number 3, inflation is going to be in double digits. Well, I think double digits doesn't show the magnitude of the inflation. Can't say it's going to be in triple digits now, probably not in 2023, but it's going to go up so much. Head of the central bank, Elvira Nabiulina, openly warned the lawmakers and the Russian citizens of that. Openly. She's not hiding anything. She said, prepare for the worst. Inflation's going to be huge. And I agree with her. She is actually a voice of reason in Russia, and a lot of things that she said actually became reality. So I suspect, well, I predict, and I'm pretty sure that inflation in Russia is going to increase so much. We have seen, number 4, kind of summing up, we have seen a big decline in Russian economy so far. But this decline is going to be deepening every single month. There's a simple reason for this. There are no actions undertaken that can help the economy somehow, but there are actions undertaken every single month that worsen Russian economy. And again, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand where it leads the country. And at the end, I want to remind you that the worse Russian economy is doing, the better is for Ukraine. And for that matter, for the rest of the world. The sooner the war in Ukraine will be over. And this has been my message to all of you. Thank you so much for giving me a chance. Before I turn on the comments, I'd like to ask you 2 things. First, please help me spread my message by making reposts of this live stream in your social media accounts. That helps out a lot. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Like this message. And please sign up for my Telegram channel called Inside Konstantin's Russia. Description is below. The link is in the description below. So this is the way how I try to keep in touch with subscribers. I give announcements. I make private live streams, show behind the curtains of this channel, and giving you some bonus materials. Thank you so very much. Again, this has been my message. Turning on the comments now. Would like to hear your opinions and answer your questions. Thank you so much.